On this episode of That Was a Show, 1989 saw the release of one of the most memorable cinematic comedies of all time, the John Hughes classic Uncle Buck, starring the incomparable John Candy and Macaulay Culkin. A mere 1 year later, a sitcom version was released featuring practically none of the original cast. The replacements try their darndest to replicate the unique charm of the film, which is of course the story of three kids left in the care of their rough-around-the-edges uncle, Buck Russell, whilst their parents leave town to attend to a family emergency. The show has a premise that has been modified in dark and strange ways to suit the format of an ongoing series. Brynn, Aaron, and Barry light up cigars, hop in the old 77 Mercury, and try to figure out why this version of the heartwarming family story backfired. Fans of the movie will get that backfired reference. We grew up during peak sitcom, Seinfeld, Friends, The Fresh Prince, but those shows were diamonds in the rough. This podcast is not about those diamonds. It's about the rough. Some sitcoms were briefly popular in their time. Some were canceled almost immediately. You probably won't recognize most of these, and you'll ask, that was a show?
That was a show?
The podcast about failed or forgotten sitcoms from the 80s and 90s, starring
Brynn Burney,
Aaron Yeager,
And Andrew Helmer as Barry.
a Radio Gizmo production.
(2024).
Yeah. Woohoo.
2024, that's right. Yeah, that's how about that?
I don't know. I don't know how that happened. I don't know how it,
Time marches on.
Yeah. Yesterday, it feels like 2019 was yesterday. So the past 5 years have been like a goddamn blur.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah,
That's true.
the memes of people who are still reckoning with 2020 never get old.
No, because it is me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think any of us will get over it until 2030, It'll take a whole nother decade for us to even.
That's not a year that I'm ready to talk about. That's
It's only
no.
6 years away.
No, that's
yeah.
I'm still mystified that there are adults with birthdays beginning in 2000 and something.
Yeah, I know. Full
Oh, yeah.
adults.
You can drink if you were born in 2005?
No.
That is so unacceptable.
That's that makes me so
If
uncomfortable.
you were born when I was in university.
Deeply uncomfortable.
Brynn and I graduated high school in 2000.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't need to put the exact years out there, Barry.
We're not. This isn't the podcast.
No, this is the podcast. This is absolutely the podcast.
Oh, no.
None of that's getting cut out.
Why?
Can you bleep out the year, because that would be funny?
Yes, I can do
Okay.
that. That would be funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how people develop parasocial relationships with us.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
By the way, for everybody out there, feel free to get a little bit more parasocial.
Yeah.
Just hit us up.
yeah.
Creep us out. I don't care.
Yeah.
Before we get into our actual topic for the episode, does anyone have any first orders of business?
What is this, a Mason meeting?
I don't know. I don't even know what you mean by that.
I don't know. Just, anything
Do you want to roll? You want to do roll call?
roll?
Yeah.
Fine, never mind.
I mean, we've been dying to talk to you about jury duty, Barry, if you have seen
Yes,
it.
that's true.
Whether you've seen it or not.
Seen what?
Jury duty.
The TV series, the 8-part miniseries called Jury Duty.
Is it based off of the Pauly Shore movie?
No. No, it's on Amazon, And
It's the greatest.
on one level, the less you know going into it, the better.
Yeah, I don't want to even
But
say anything.
it's a comedy, and you need to just watch it and take what you see at face value, and then we can discuss.
It's very unique.
It's very unique. I promise you will be intrigued.
I've never even heard of it.
Okay.
But I mean, that's not really a surprise for me.
It's been a little under the radar in general, but
Everyone
Yeah.
who watches it freaks out and thinks it's the greatest thing ever. And it seems to be the thing that's like uniting all age groups, basically.
This, I have to say, this is a little disheartening because I don't think I've ever been like so far outside of the pulse that I'd never even heard of something.
yeah.
That's new. Like when people talk about like White Lotus, I can be like, yes, I've seen, I know it exists.
So for your benefit and any listeners who haven't seen it, very, very simply put, the premise is it's a fake reality TV show about what it's like to do jury duty, where everybody who's on the jury is an actor, a comic actor, except for one person who thinks this is actual jury duty, and he's in a documentary about a real court case.
That's real?
That's real.
So it's
that
like kind of
one guy thinks it's a real court case, and he thinks everyone else there is a real juror just like him, and he thinks the judge is a judge and the lawyers are lawyers, and he thinks it's all a reality TV show, like a documentary show about being on a jury. He agrees to be in a TV show, but he thinks that the TV show is a real court case.
It's a lot of people from The Office working on it, like writers and producers.
Yeah. And
so, anyway,
when you hear that description, your initial reaction, like I'm sure many people, is going to be like, what? So the whole thing is just punking this guy? Just trust us. The way that this actually evolves is so much more charming and amusing than you would possibly expect.
Kids don't know what punking means.
Yeah.
That's a
punking.
20-year-old pop culture.
Oh, but
reference.
they might, because it's like Y2K era.
Yeah. It's like low-rise jeans.
Yeah.
It's coming back.
Punking's back?
I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I think somebody, whatever. This is great. Great radio. Great radio.
Yeah.
I'll give a 30-second bit on what I've watched recently.
Okay. Go for it.
I absolutely devoured in like 3 sittings 2 seasons of Our Flag Means Death.
Okay.
Which is the Rhys Darby, Taika Waititi pirate comedy. And I have not loved something this much in a long time. It is just so very, very funny, very character based, and like its claim to fame is basically like it is like ridiculously, adorably romantic, and like it is like I was so invested in the relationships on this show, and I was just like, man, it's great. It got canceled like a week ago.
Oh no.
And I knew that going in, but like I had heard so many people say like it had a great ending. So even though everybody was very upset that it got canceled, it was it was good. It was fine that it went out the way it was, and I agree. So that's why I agreed to watch it, because I was like, well, if it's got an ending, I can do 2 seasons of something.
I feel like a lot of really good shows are getting just shit canned.
Yeah,
left and right.
It's on HBO Max, or that's not even what it's called anymore. So everything gets canceled
Max.
there.
Oh.
Max. It's called Max. It's just going to be M soon.
Showtime has been really ruthless too. Like they canceled a lot of, like they canceled I Love That For You, and that was like one of our favorite comedies in a long time.
Yeah.
They had 1 season, and it was so funny and so brilliant, and it's just gone before it even had a chance to do anything, basically.
Yeah.
So
they don't give the old Netflix 3 seasons and you're out. Like,
yeah.
Well, I'm going to use this opportune moment for a segue into talking about a show that got canceled, deservedly so.
True, but there's There is 22 episodes of this crap-a-rama.
Yeah. Although, yeah. Okay. Well,
All right,
let's get into it.
Yeah.
I've written extensive intro for this one.
Okay, I'll
So,
buckle in then.
Buckle in.
Ah!
Oh, no.
Oh, I didn't even mean
Didn't
it.
even.
I
Okay.
didn't even mean to make a joke there.
All right.
Buckle.
Buckle. Okay. Well,
All right.
on that note, for our first episode of 2024, we decided to embark on another badaptation. Many listeners will, of course, be familiar with the 1989 John Hughes classic Uncle Buck, starring the legendary John Candy as Uncle Buck, as well as, of course, Macaulay Culkin, Gabby Hoffman, and Jean Louisa Kelly as the three kids. The plot of the movie was very simple. Parents need to rush off to deal with a family emergency and leave their kids in the care of the only person available, Uncle Buck. The tension comes from the fact that Buck, single without kids, a little bit rootless in his lifestyle, seems like the last person that they would choose. Buck drinks a lot, smokes cigars, and manages to squeak by through betting on rigged horse races. So, Buck is reluctant to take on the responsibility as well, but ultimately is willing. The parents are gone for a couple weeks, and over that time, Buck and the kids learn to appreciate each other's company. Buck turns out to be a very lovable, protective, and overall good guy beneath his rough exterior. The film was fairly successful upon release and grew into a cult classic over the years. So a mere 1 year later, in 1990, CBS decided to turn this movie into a sitcom. It launched on September 10th, 1990, which incidentally is the same day that The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air premiered. 22 episodes were produced, but the series ended March 9th, 1991, after apparently only 16 episodes had aired. The series stars Kevin Meaney of stand-up comedy fame in the titular role, and it's pretty clear from the first moment on screen he's doing a deliberate impression of John Candy. The rest of the cast includes Davy Choden as Tia, Jacob Gilman as Miles, and Sarah Martinek as Maisie, which are all the same names and characters from the kids in the movie. Here's the surprising twist. In order for there to be a reason for Uncle Buck to be looking after these kids on an ongoing basis, rather than for just a couple weeks like in the film, the premise is that both parents died in a car accident 5 months before the start of the series.
They bought it.
Yeah. Uncle Buck was selected in the father's will as the person to care for the kids. An added source of tension arises in that their grandmother, Maggie Hogoboom, is the executor of the estate and controls money from the life insurance. Thus, Buck is reliant on her ongoing approval since he's basically a stay-at-home dad to the kids and she pays the bills. An interesting detail is that Maggie is played by Audrey Meadows, best known as Alice Cramden on The Honeymooners. So, we watched 2 episodes, the pilot and episode 3 titled Gray Fox. In the pilot, Tia wants to go out on a date with some guy. Buck was planning to go to poker night with his buddies, so he was expecting her to babysit her younger siblings while he's gone. She is quite argumentative and insistent, and he reluctantly agrees to host the poker night at their house so that he can watch the kids and she can go out. But he also insists on meeting this guy to potentially approve of him. Buck wants some extra money from the family trust to spend on a mysterious sure thing and meets with the rep from the insurance agency. She informs him that he must get the approval of the grandmother, who of course hates him. Meanwhile, Miles is getting bullied in school, and Buck suggests that he ought to start learning to defend himself and fight back against the bully, which is a trope that we've seen in literally everything ever. Buck is called into the school to meet with the principal when it turns out that Miles gave this other kid a black eye. And for a further surprise, this bully who he fought back against is in fact a girl. Long story short, the principal believes the kids are acting out due to the loss of their parents, which is a very rational thing to come up. So kind of strange that gets just dismissed. But anyway, it's poker night and the guys come over. One of them is Buck's buddy Skank, played by the only actor from the original movie who makes it onto this show, Dennis Cockrum. In the movie, he played the creep at the bowling alley who hits on Tia.
That's Pal. That's Pal.
Sorry?
No, I'm just saying,
that character's
his character name is Pal
in the movie, but in the show,
I know.
it's Skank.
Okay,
which is
gotcha.
a very odd choice.
Gotcha. In both the movie and this scene in the sitcom, he stabs the roof of his mouth with a toothpick. Meanwhile, the guy comes over to pick up Tia for their date. He's much, much older than her, arrives in a limo for some reason, and is wearing a large silver metallic leisure suit. Buck, of course, toys with him a bit and then scares him off. Grandmother Maggie comes over, skeptical about the request for the money, which she assumes he's going to gamble away, and finds out about the kids acting up in school, the poker, da-da-da-da-da, and gets a sense that Buck is, as per her suspicions, not a suitable caregiver. Buck gives her a speech defending how he cares about the kids. The money was for a prom dress for Tia to try to convince her to go to prom and spend time with boys of an appropriate age, etc. The grandmother talks to the little kids and realizes that Buck has been in his own way helping them cope with the loss of their parents. And in a very hard emotional turn, she decides to sympathize with him and continue to let him be their parent. But, big finger wag, she'll be watching him. So there you go.
Yeah. I should say off the top, the comment of they bought it
Yeah.
was actually said by one of the kids in a precocious moment.
Yeah.
And it was so inappropriate.
It was, I will say this though, the only thing this show comes close to emulating correctly is Miles and Maisie.
Yeah.
They are similar. They are just as weird, just as sharp-tongued as they were. Obviously, you know, you're no Macaulay Culkin, but those characters felt like they walked off the movie.
Yeah.
Everybody else does not.
Yeah. Miles, the little boy Miles, was the only source of a couple of genuine laughs for me.
Yeah.
In the entire
was
thing.
The they bought it line, big time.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because they keep doubling down on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As dark
they cashed in, they checked out. Like,
as dark and nonsense as it is, it did like kind of earn a laugh because that kid did a good job of delivering it.
It definitely, this version of Uncle Buck is way edgier than the movie.
No.
Well,
not even close.
It's edgy in the sense that like Tia, her whole deal is that she wants to literally, you know, like there's some scary men like going after her.
That's Tia's whole thing in the movie too. Tia's all about the dangerous guys in the movie.
Okay, but at least I think we can...
In the movie, they're age appropriate, at least.
Buck threatens Bug with a hatchet.
Yeah, but Bug is more age appropriate.
That's true.
And he's not wearing a metallic leisure suit.
Yeah.
No.
He doesn't look like he, like, does blow in nightclub bathrooms and, like, you know...
I think Ponytail Leisure Suit is a much more suitable partner than Bug is for anyone.
Well,
yeah.
I wrote sort of some initial thoughts, reactions to this show that I wrote so that I could kind of structure these thoughts because I was trying to figure out how to react to this because, like, I really like the movie Uncle Buck.
Yeah.
I love the movie Uncle Buck. It is one of my favorite comedies.
And of all the bad adaptations that we've done, this was one where, to be perfectly honest, going into it, they were going to really have to push a boulder up a hill to impress me. And, so here's my initial commentary. The movie Uncle Buck is a decent story. Charming 80s style family comedy about a lovable loser, fish out of water type, whatever. But let's be honest here. Uncle Buck is a great film because of John Candy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing that somebody thought, let's turn this movie into a TV series a year later without John Candy and with this premise that does not lend itself naturally to an ongoing episodic format.
Yeah.
There's no way to overstate the impact Candy had on every film he touched. His level of on-screen charisma had that transformative effect on characters like this, where no matter how like rough around the edges or obnoxious a character is, John Candy makes them lovable and charming, like effortlessly. The only other actor of the time who might have had an even stronger presence would be Eddie Murphy. But that's the league that we're talking about, right? And so even the thing about actors at that time, like John Candy, even though he sort of at least partially got his start on SCTV, in those days, if you broke out on the big screen, you didn't really you didn't go back to TV. You didn't do TV shows. So obviously,
never.
It's not
in the 90s. At least.
Not from 1990. So
honestly, the last 10 years is pretty much when you were allowed to go back and
exactly.
forth.
So it's obvious that John Candy and Macaulay Culkin and the others in the movie were not going to be in a sitcom about the same premise. Like, that's obvious, right? But they could have tried to adapt the character in a more general way, and rather than trying to mimic John Candy, just take the character in a somewhat different direction. Like, Kevin Meaney does a laudable attempt, but the problem is that the character is just a constant reminder that you could just turn this off and be watching John Candy right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all you think the entire time is, I just would rather be watching the movie.
Put it on immediately. As soon as I finished, I put it right on.
Like, just as a palate cleanser to just be like, oh yeah.
Completely.
Yeah. That's
I think
what
for
this
me,
is supposed to be. Yeah.
If I could put an underline on anything that doesn't work here, it's Kevin Meaney.
Yeah. Sadly.
I didn't really get the impression he was doing a John Candy impression so much as, like, you know, like when the Kardashians dress up for Halloween, and they'll do a pop culture character, and it looks like them, but you know they've never encountered that piece of pop culture in their life.
Yeah,
that's what I got here. I got, this looks like Kevin Meaney looked at some still frames from, and you know what, that's mean to Meaney to pick on him for that, because it's all wardrobe, that's all them, but like he leans into the fact is his whole performance is Uncle Buck smokes a cigar 2 or 3 times in the movie, so Kevin Meaney is gonna chomp on a cigar the entire thing. Like, Buck's not like smoking a cigar, like making him breakfast and stuff, but that's the first thing we see here.
Yeah. It is a caricature of the character. There were certain specific facial expressions and body language and gestures that I recognized that were kind of like, it feels to me like if someone in the cast of Saturday Night Live was, for the purpose of a sketch, just doing a quick John Candy from Uncle Buck impersonation. Like, it's to me, it felt like he was trying to do that. And again, I don't think that was necessarily his idea. I feel like that was built into this. I feel like that was their goal with this show.
They got the haircut right.
Yeah, like the cigar thing is a perfect example.
A good chunk of that first episode, that pilot, was just him smoking a cigar with an apron on and singing and dancing to various songs that seemed too expensive for them to have gotten, and doing chores in a goofy way. Like, that was like that whole episode. And then it, in between, there'd be these moments of like getting nagged at by the grandma, or like getting, trying to get rid of that creepy guy or whatever. But it was like the first half was just him in an apron being goofy.
Yeah. And another thing, the opening
and his Cubs jersey.
Can't forget about the Cubs jersey.
Really leaning into Chicago and loving the Cubs. But like, another thing, the opening title sequence. Okay, I'm not even going to talk about the song. The ridiculous.
I didn't need an Uncle Buck song, guys.
But even aside from the song, the opening titles are full of these visual scenes, like little vignettes, that are straight up ripped off from the movie, but recreated with this cast. So like, he pulls up in front of the high school and the old car backfires and all the kids out front think a gun went off, or he's flipping the giant pancake with like the snow shovel. Those are things that happened once in the movie. And the opening sequence of this show is just one after another of iconic moments poorly recreated from the movie, and probably which never happened in this TV series.
It's the Wish version of Uncle Buck.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Here's a fun fact.
You just said vignettes. And complete aside.
Yeah.
You guys remember Vines, like the pre-TikTok?
Yeah.
Is that vignettes? that what they were trying to do there? They were vignettes.
Oh, interesting question.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I
Anyway.
don't think anyone's really analyzed Vine.
I
It's been
I like to stop the podcast dead in its tracks when I can.
Yeah, just to rip the record player needle right off the record with that sound. Apparently, according to something I read in Wikipedia, at the time when this premiered, there was a small controversy in the press over the fact that the very first scene has, I guess it's Maisie telling Buck, "You suck," and apparently that's the first time that anyone ever remarked that, like uttered that line on TV, on broadcast television, and apparently "you suck" like was considered potentially offensive. So having
I don't want to put us all back into the late 80s and the early 90s, but "you suck" was a big deal. I would get in trouble for "you suck." Like that, it was the worst thing we had.
Because like a little kid telling an adult "you suck" was apparently like a big deal at the time.
Oh, huge.
Didn't The Simpsons, didn't Bart say I guess he said "this sucks."
He also said "eat my shorts" a lot.
Yeah.
Which famously caused the Bushes to rail against the Simpsons, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It's so funny that
Around the same
you
time.
suck would be such a big deal.
Yeah.
I feel like we were throwing that around left and right
know.
in high school times.
Yeah.
I don't even know if the kids say it anymore.
I feel like it's
it's not.
We're also talking about an era where the
Isn't
opening...
there a song called "You Suck"?
Is there?
Like a pop song?
Like current pop song?
No, there was a Pink song. It was like,
Oh.
Is it a Pink song? Anyway, whatever.
We're also
Keep
talking
going off the rails.
Keeping the references current as always, guys.
Exactly.
We're also talking about a show from an era where the opening begins with a special logo that confirms that the show is in stereo, which is good to know, because I was worried that it might be mono. Like that was my biggest concern.
I like the little animation on those.
Yeah.
Logos. I also, man, I do appreciate just ripping the logo from the movie box right off, throwing it at the screen.
Yeah.
Just in case you thought maybe this wasn't about that Uncle Buck, in case you thought this was another Uncle Buck, within the first 10 seconds you got that title card and you got a guy flipping a goddamn giant pancake with a snowshoe.
Yeah. My one big genuine laugh, as I said, it was the boy Miles. I remember now, I wrote it down what it was. It was when so after Buck finds out that the kid who was bullying him was a girl, and he asks why he never mentioned that. His response was that he didn't think it was germane.
Thought, that was again, Miles. These are all things that character would drop all the time. Yeah.
So that kid, obviously you can't replace Macaulay Culkin in 1989, 1990, but that kid...
He did a great job. He was funny.
He showed up and he came to play. He did his job, that's for sure.
I mean, if they really... honestly, they should have just tried to see what Kieran was up to. They could have got him. They could have got him early. You know?
Yeah.
The pre-Fuller. Kieran.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. Going back to what you said about Uncle Buck, the movie, John Candy is absolutely the reason why that movie is so great and so memorable. But even just everything in that movie just sort of clicks.
Yeah.
Right. Even, you have all these kid actors who could just be nothing. And the roles for those characters could be nothing. But they make each of those kids is so idiosyncratic and unique and just their own thing. And then you got this weird supporting cast, Amy Madigan is great in it. Laurie Metcalf is really funny in it. This one's we're not there. I mean, this is what's the grandmother's name? Hoggleboom?
Hogoboom is her last name. It's Maggie Hogoboom.
Yeah, Aaron and I were just perplexed as to why she wasn't just named the guardian, like, and like why she didn't go like live with them.
Well, because Buck's in the will.
Yeah, but
I know, but
if
like-
she has the power to oust him,
Yeah.
it just felt like the whole like premise of like, why would he be the one to look after them instead of her? You would think it's because the grandmother would be like advanced in age and not able to like, wouldn't have necessarily the energy to like look after and raise 3 kids. But the choice they made with her character between
she was a very strong, very
between the casting and the
like,
dialogue, it's
If that was your mother or your mother-in-law, do you think you would have the guts to not put her as the
No,
guardian in
exactly,
your
yeah.
will?
Like-
no.
she comes in ready to kick his ass physically.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
she's in perfectly good shape to take care of these kids and clearly has their best interests in mind. Like she's the rational choice
They made
as the legal guardian.
They made some comment about the fact that she couldn't leave her home to go live with them, but I'm like, why not?
Yeah, I don't buy that for a second.
I don't understand. Like that makes no sense.
She pops by a lot for
A
somebody
lot.
who lives hours
yeah,
away.
exactly. It doesn't make any sense. It's like she's presumably retired if she did have a career or whatever. It's like, why wouldn't she just like go move into that house? It's a very nice house. Like, I don't understand. At least while the kids are young, like it doesn't.
And like, there's,
Yeah.
She stays over once, and it's like, it's such a huge thing where she's like, oh, she's going to stay over. And you're like, really? She's not invited to stay when she travels 4 hours away?
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Come on,
It's
guys.
like she'll make a drive, like a 4-hour drive just for a half-hour pop in to go yell at them a little bit and then leave. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah. And then there's the thing with the insurance agent who's like coming on to Buck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that she's like the Darcy Dahlgren Frost character for this. Like she's the one going for Buck. Like Buck's supposed to be irresistible to women.
It's like, what? Yeah, and it just, I don't know. There's a lot of things that are unrealistic in this, and of course, like obviously, the way that none of the kids seem to be like significantly traumatized by the sudden loss of both of their parents, and how that's just kind of a passing gag in a way.
I did appreciate that there was lip service to conversations they'd had about the passing, and that maybe they were, we're not seeing it right now, but there are
sure.
Let's put it that way. Full House and stuff doesn't always have that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's funny you say Full House, because one of my notes, I think I came to this conclusion after after watching the other episode that we watched, is that this is basically Full House if the only adult there was Uncle Jesse. Like, in other words,
isn't he more of an Uncle Joey, maybe?
Or maybe an Uncle Joey, but basically it's kind of like
Jesse's the actual family and Joey's the friend.
Family
friend.
So
probably but in any case, it's like Full House, but instead of the dad and 2 other dudes, it's just an uncle. But like it,
once again, a man raising children alone. Hilarious.
Huge trope for the time. But like it still feels to me like, some of the banter in this was fine, like for a pilot. Again, like, we can't always judge the first few episodes of one of these sitcoms from that era as far as like how good it could have gotten. So like, just in terms of like the dialogue and the comedy writing, the acting, like everyone was trying. It feels like the premise that they were applying all of that work and effort to was not worth trying to do. Like trying to turn Uncle Buck into a TV show is fundamentally not a great idea, at least not a year after the movie. And so like, no matter how much heavy lifting they did, like
honestly, it's a fine idea. We've seen plenty of sitcoms with flimsier premises for that. It's just you have to figure out what you want the show to be about once you're past the premise.
Yes.
Right? You need to. Are you a hangout show? Are you a family comedy? What are you? What stories are you trying to tell? And this is like, it just wants to just be like a a greatest hits of a movie.
Yeah, a snapshot of bits that you remember from that movie, as opposed to trying to redefine itself in its own way. There was also, I'll just briefly mention, a 2016 attempt to turn Uncle Buck into a series.
When I was doing my research.
That I knew. That was, I want to say, Mike Epps.
Yeah, with an all black cast, and I haven't done any research into that show because 2016 is
way beyond our purview.
Our scope.
Yeah,
we're talking about 80s and 90s. I know that show was also like canceled very quickly. It wasn't successful, but as far as whether it was like a good attempt or not, I have no idea. I haven't seen any of it. I don't even know where to find it, but I'm curious, like, to your point, it's not a bad concept. And if you're approaching it with a totally different cast many, many years later, that to me sounds way more promising.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather see the version of Uncle Buck in 2016 with a black family. Like, to me, that's like saying, okay, we kind of like the concept of this character, but we're going to evolve this into a totally different thing and give it, breathe new life into it. To me, that's a good reason to try to revitalize a character. But it also didn't succeed, and I have no idea why. But
yeah. I mean, because just so many sitcoms are made and go away quickly. Like, it's just the reality of it. Even, we look at this era that we cover on this podcast, and there's like an endless trove. But if you really like in the 80s and 90s, but if you really look at it, there's tons of similar shows in other decades since. Like, there's tons of shows that were only 4 episodes, 5 episodes, 1 season. Like, there's tons. It's just the way it goes. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, they love to, make these shows and then pull the plug if it's not an immediate hit.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I think, maybe they rush it a little too much, and maybe they rushed this show and they didn't really think it through that well, or they had too many people chiming in. I think it's always like a combination of both. I think it's always a combination of they either rushed the premise too much, they rushed the scripts too much, or they had way too many network notes. They had way too many people chiming in on what it should be or what it shouldn't be, and then it became this big convoluted mess. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And also, like, when you think of the Buck character, right? The whole thing is like he smokes cigars, he drinks, he bets on horses or whatever. But that's not something that's easy. Like, if that's your explanation for why he's like a fish out of water here, that's hard to like keep that going in perpetuity.
Yeah. Buck himself doesn't necessarily, outside of, say, the pancakes and whatnot, doesn't necessarily come off as a sitcom type character. I think another reason why Uncle Buck works as a movie is because, for the most part, it's rooted in real life, outside of snow shovel pancakes. And Buck is not, he's not larger than life at all. Like, he is just, he's irresponsible, but like, he's not over the top, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a show about someone who's learning to take on a level of responsibility that they're not used to, but like, he's not an Adam Sandler character. Exactly. So it's a style of like family comedy from the 80s that you don't see these getting made these days. It's a particular kind of like comedy format. It's also a movie, like, when you watch it, like, even the cinematography is so like naturalistic and almost drab in the color scheme that it's not like leading the witness. It's not saying like you're in for some zany laughs. It's more like, here's just like a reality type of thing.
Yeah. It looks like a John Hughes.
Like a John Hughes, typical John Hughes style. It's more like the humor emerges organically from these characters. It doesn't feel like you're just trying to push jokes into it. And in a sitcom, you actually kind of need a character where it works to be like, well, we need 2 jokes a page, and we just need to make that work. Do we want to move on to the other episode?
Yeah.
Okay.
By all means.
Okay. So episode 3 is titled Gray Fox. So this is about Buck's old friend and mentor, Pete, who drops in. Pete is played by Art Carney, who is best known for his role as Jackie Gleason's best friend on The Honeymooners. This is basically reuniting him with Audrey Meadows, who, as mentioned before, plays the grandmother. For listeners who don't know, The Honeymooners from 1955 is known as one of the first ever American sitcoms and really helped establish this format. So this would have been kind of a fun Easter egg for older viewers of this show. And they both have excellent on-screen presence, which is wasted on the following plot. Pete is some sort of old-timey hustler, a grifter, if you will, who travels around conning people out of money. He apparently taught Buck much of what he knows, implying that Buck was also some sort of thief and hustler of sorts in the not-so-distant past. Not sure why you would add that to the backstory of a character that you're trying to establish as a responsible caregiver to 3 children. But moving on, he wants to stay at the house until he can figure out his next move. Buck wants to let him stay there, but needs to be discreet about this, knowing that Grandma Maggie Hogoboom is on her way over for one of the kids' birthday parties. The twist is that Pete and Maggie hit it off. They both stay over at the house that night and actually sleep together. Pete gets Maggie to write him a $5,000 check to invest in some sort of stock deal on her behalf, but of course both Buck and us, the audience, know that he's definitely just stealing her money. Buck, to his credit, tries, unsuccessfully though, to get the money back and confesses everything he knows about Pete to Maggie. Ultimately, spoiler alert, Pete returns the money, but not because of Buck's convincing, but because he really likes her. In the end, she feels more flattered than betrayed, so there's that.
Yeah, this episode definitely, it felt like I was not in on a joke. Right? Because I, as somebody who co-hosts a podcast about sitcoms, am familiar with The Honeymooners.
Yeah.
I know of it. I'm sure I've seen bits and pieces, Straight to the Moon and all that.
Yeah.
But I have no reverence for it.
Yeah.
So none of Art Carney does nothing for me.
Yeah.
And
it's
this episode, we're episode 3, and we're already basically like giving a full episode over to somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like, the only, obviously we're also aware of The Honeymooners. I've always been aware of The Honeymooners, but I've never actually seen The Honeymooners. It's always been other things referencing The Honeymooners.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things where, if I didn't know the background, I wouldn't even have known who these characters were. Like why this was significant, like why they were back on screen together and why it was like a big deal.
Yes, The Honeymooners.
I guess all I knew was like this trope of like that is woven into the plot of con artists. I feel like con artists were like a big trope in the 90s.
I put that too. I wrote, I feel like old-timey hustlers are a sitcom trope.
Yeah.
What's with that?
Anytime you want to like slide in like a sitcom star of yore, I feel like one of the first things that gets brought up is, what if he's a con artist?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like there was like a weird thing with that in that time period, the early 90s. I'm thinking of that. Remember that movie Curly Sue? Yeah, where like it's like a little girl and her dad on the run because they're con artists, and it's like that was just such a weird popular trope at the time.
Of course, The Simpsons did that in an episode too, but they did it in a much more amusing way.
Hey, that's John Hughes.
It's
what? Who is John Hughes?
Curly Sue.
Oh, Curly Sue is John Hughes. Oh, that makes
interesting.
sense. I want to watch that movie.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't hold up.
No. Well, I was going to say The
But it's John Hughes. It might.
I mean, much of the humor.
A lot of Hughes doesn't,
but Yeah.
It could be cute. I bet you it's cute.
But, much of The Honeymooners doesn't hold up for sure. The Honeymooners is sort of the live action version of the Flintstones, which is kind of an animated take on the same concept. And if you make the mistake of watching a Flintstones episode today, you will hear things in dialogue where you're like, I can't believe they did that. It is, doesn't hold up. But, so, but 1990, I guess people like to reference, if you think about it, the time between 1955 and 1990 is 35 years.
No.
No, we can't.
No.
So that is approximately the same amount of time between now and the original movie Uncle Buck or this sitcom Uncle Buck.
No.
Yep.
I hate when people bring these things up. It's the worst. It makes me feel like such a dinosaur. I can't even handle it.
I know.
This is like John. So it's like, I mean, I could totally see a sitcom now, like toss it in John Stamos as an aging con artist.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
And we would potentially,
be
if
like,
we liked,
hey, look at that, it's Uncle Jesse.
We would potentially be amused by that.
Yeah.
Because of our sense of nostalgia.
Yeah, shit. Yeah, you're right.
Or even someone like Mark Paul Gosselaar or
even better.
Carl Wins. Oh, he's no longer alive, but Reginald Bell Johnson, did he pass away?
Barry's looking it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Reginald's still with us.
He's still kicking.
He's only 70. He's only 71.
Okay. If he appeared in a show today as a grifter, I would love it.
Yeah.
So if I'm being totally honest.
Reginald Bell Johnson, 100%. I would tune right into that.
Yeah, I'm down for it.
Okay, so you're right. Eating my words here on being like, this is not for me.
So for baby boomers in 1990 who were the parents watching this show with their kids, let's say, it kind of makes sense, the casting, which is, again, why my problem with this show is not really in the, casting or the, jokes, but it's more just in the, overall construct. And I think this episode even further emphasized that, because like you said, you're 3 episodes deep and you're already giving over the whole episode to a guest player.
There was so much back and forth in this. I thought the first time that Art Carney left that the episode was over because it felt like it had already been on for 20 minutes. But then he came back and left 3 more times. So I don't know. Also, so right off the bat in this one, we're continuing the Uncle Buck's greatest hits in that he is decorating for a kid's birthday party in an unconventional way. This is his bread and butter. But then we don't really see the kid's birthday party. In fact, we just skip right over it.
This may seem like a small detail, but Buck's outfit in this episode, light blue golf shirt and shorts, felt kind of off.
I was just glad to see him not cosplaying Uncle Buck from the movie.
Yeah.
Sure, but if their way of saying, okay, we're going to give him a unique outfit that's not ripped off of the movie, this is the way they went? All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that the way of showing that
It was pretty rough. I mean, they were expecting to get some laughs out of the outfit alone. Or, I don't know, maybe it was just 80s fashion.
Yeah.
Tough to say.
But this episode does confirm that the grandmother is a regular ongoing player in the series and keeps popping in.
Just doing some pop buys.
So, yeah.
They got to get all the mileage they can out of her last name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really have any other notes.
Yeah. I mean, we have to obviously there's this is chock full of tropes. We already mentioned the the con artist trope, and then there's the poker night trope.
Yep.
There's the
School bully.
boy crazy, the bully and the boy crazy teen girl. It's just trope.
Oh yeah,
trope.
She's a bit of a well, no, I was gonna say a proto Kelly Bundy, but I guess a contemporary of Kelly Bundy.
Right.
Yeah, but she didn't have the kind of Kelly Bundy was also like meant to be a kind of a bimbo, pardon my, judginess. But yeah, like her character was written to be was written to be flighty, whereas Tia's was kind of more calculating. Like she was a very clever girl who was kind of calculating, but also boy crazy.
Yeah.
So it's like, like kind of like, but the whole idea that literally like teenage girls just want to date every like man and boy that comes around is like annoying.
In that episode, there's that comment about like the guy who's fixing the car, and she wants to know if she can like go after the guy who's fixing the car or whatever. Like they play it as if literally any guy who crosses her sight lines, she has to like go after, which is like that seems to be the whole basis for the character.
It's pretty rough.
Yeah, and this guy's like well into his 30s. Like when he's shown on screen, and he's like, do you know what she said I could do with my, like, what was the tool that he was talking about? Something like, it was some inappropriate double entendre related to, was it gear shifter? I don't know.
And
whatever.
She's supposed to be 16. It's brutal.
But it's not funny though.
No.
Like with Callie Bundy, it was kind of funny. Like, like you kind of believed
Christina Applegate. You know, a lot of that in her delivery of things.
Yeah.
Her not to rip a new one to this.
No, she was fine. It's the way she's written.
It's the way she's written.
Yeah.
It's exactly the thing that Married with Children was doing, and I'm not saying that it's not also offensive for other reasons, but the thing that show was always trying to do was parody a classic family sitcom by turning it on its head and saying, we're going to take all these tropes of things that happen in a classic family sitcom, but the very dark, amoral version of it. And it leans so far in that direction that that's sort of the point. And like you watch it today, and obviously a lot of the stuff in it doesn't hold up. But at the time, that was a clever thing to do, to kind of flip the format on its head. And that cast makes it very funny.
Mm-hmm.
They're all very funny people. I think the cast of this show had the potential to be very funny people in perhaps a different show, just different situations. Like I don't think there was anything wrong with any of their acting chops. This is just, this is the material that was put together. And and I don't know, it's like trying to take these things that in Uncle Buck, it's finding humor in unlikely situations and trying to sandwich that into a thing where the whole basis is every situation is supposed to be silly. Brynn, can you connect Uncle Buck, the 1990 sitcom, with Friends?
So I can. And actually, this was one of the more challenging ones in a while. Okay, so there is one degree connection, but it feels like not the best one because it's basically a character that we didn't even see in that 2 episodes that we watched, and he was just in 2 episodes. But at any rate, the actor Sam Anderson, who was in 2 episodes of Uncle Buck as a character named Kroger, maybe one of Buck's friends. I don't know who he was supposed to be. I tried to look into it, but I couldn't find descriptions of those episodes anywhere online. Like, it was really challenging. And then I tried to find those episodes to watch online. Couldn't find those either. But at any rate, he guest starred on Friends. So that's a 1 degree connection. Now, with the main cast, okay, we have some connections with Kevin Meaney.
Okay.
So I was able to basically find 3 different 4 degree connections.
Wow.
Yeah, and all the other main cast, I will say, I couldn't really find something solid to grab onto. And I was shocked that Dennis Cockrum didn't have a strong connection because he's just been in so much. But at any rate, Kevin Meaney, who played Buck, so he also guest starred on Ned and Stacy. And Ned and Stacy starred, as you remember, Thomas Hayden Church, Thomas Hayden Church co-starred on Wings with Steven Weber. Steven Weber co-starred with Matthew Perry on Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. And then, of course, we all know the late Matthew Perry played Chandler Bing on Friends. So that's one 4 Degree connection. The next 4 Degree connection is also through the Ned and Stacey universe, through Thomas Hayden Church. So again, he co-starred on Wings with Tim Daly. Tim Daly co-starred with Jennifer Aniston in the rom-com Object of My Affection. And Jennifer Aniston, of course, was Rachel Green on Friends. And then finally, Kevin Meaney, again, as a guest star on Ned and Stacey, was also acting alongside Nadia Dejani, who was part of the main cast. Nadia Dejani was in a short-lived sitcom called That's Life, which co-starred Ron Livingston. Ron Livingston was in the movie Office Space with Jennifer Aniston. Jennifer Aniston was Rachel Green on Friends.
Wow.
And I have to give a huge thanks to our previous episode on Ned and Stacey for me to even be able to cobble those together quickly, because I remembered, I was like, okay, there were some connections via Thomas Hayden Church. So as soon as I saw that Kevin Meaney was on Ned and Stacey, I was like, okay, well, there's something here.
That's good.
But I was like struggling for a while to like grab onto something with all of them.
This might be one of my favorite 6 degrees that you've done.
Oh, okay. Well,
I am
it's
very
so complicated.
okay I'm very okay going through Ned and Stacey.
Yeah, well, because it's a reminder of that show, and that was a very fun show that we all enjoyed.
It was also the episode where I kept messing up the name of the show and saying like Ted and Nancy and various other name combos.
Yeah. Yeah, but that was anyone out there. If this is your first episode, go back and listen to our Ned and Stacey episode, because it was a very fun romp.
That's a solid ep.
Yeah.
If this was your first episode, also let us know. Like,
what made you listen?
How did you do?
Yeah.
How'd you manage this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it'd be a little rough.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. And then I guess we'll just segue right into the spin-off, because
spinning.
Yeah, I mean, the issue with this show is people were either kind of on their way out of their career, or kind of were in the child star realm that didn't really continue acting. So all 3 kids that starred David Choden, Sarah Martinek, and Jacob Gelman didn't really do much after. They all only have like a couple credits on IMDb in the 90s, just popping up in random sitcoms. Sarah Martinek, it's funny because she guest starred on like a couple of bigger shows like Evening Shade, My So-Called Life, and she also guest starred on 2 Twas shows, Maybe This Time, and the John Larroquette Show. So, so she's a Twas all-star. And then of course we have Kevin Meaney. He has had a good career. He did a lot of guest starring roles throughout the 90s following his stint as Uncle Buck. In a ton of voice acting as well. His biggest voice acting role was in an animated series called Mad Jack the Pirate, which I'm not familiar with, but it actually has a pretty good cast if you feel like looking that up. And then he kept appearing in television sporadically until his death in 2016. So he's unfortunately no longer with us. And then we have Dennis Cockrum, who played Skank, and as Aaron already mentioned, was the only actor from the original movie to make it to this television show. He is probably the most, like, besides the 2 legends we already mentioned, he is like the most prolific actor. He's like a very well-known character actor, having done 120 various roles over the years. Like, that's how many credits he has listed on IMDb, at least. He's guest starred in successful sitcoms including Home Improvement, Third Rock from the Sun, The West Wing, 6 Feet Under, and then dramas like 6 Feet Under, Desperate Housewives, Shameless, American Horror Story, and tons more. And then we'll give a shout out, of course, to Audrey Meadows and Art Carney. So Audrey Meadows was already a TV legend, having starred as Alice Cramden in The Honeymooners, and she was also in the Jackie Gleason show, and just was like a household name, big presence, big like legendary presence. So this was sort of like something she did near the end of her career, and she's consistently worked like up until her death in 1996. She appeared in some Twas shows as well, including Davis Rules, Hi Honey, I'm Home, which is fun because that's like the perfect like person to guest star in that series.
I feel like we saw her on it.
Did we?
Watched it.
Maybe.
I can't remember. It's been a while. I would love to revisit
somebody's mom.
Yeah, I'd love to revisit Hi Honey, I'm Home. That was like the best. And also other like popular series like Empty Nest. And her last credit was 2 episodes of Dave's World. Do you guys remember Dave's World?
Yes.
I used to watch Dave's World.
Yes.
Yeah, and then Art Carney, he co-starred with Audrey Meadows on both The Honeymooners and the Jackie Gleason show. I don't know why I'm giving him his whole spin-off because he was only in the 1 episode, but this guest star role was his second last credit ever.
Oh,
really?
So his last credit was The Last Picture Show. So he was in the movie The Last Picture Show. Or sorry, what am I?
I was like, that movie came out in 71.
I wrote down the wrong thing. This guest star role was his second last credit ever. His last credit was The Last Action Hero.
Oh,
that Schwarzenegger movie.
Oh,
that's great fucking movie.
Yeah, and then he passed away in 2003. So,
do we think that the Last Action Hero? Do you think they were like, oh, let's get that guy from that one episode of Uncle Buck?
I mean, if you look at the cast of The Last Action Hero, there's like a lot of old school actors in that. It's chock full of those. Like
that movie was very unfairly received at the time because nobody really knew what meta was then.
Yeah.
But it is a pretty brilliant piece of satire.
Well, is that kind of like Evil Dead 2? Like people didn't get it at the time.
No, people liked Evil Dead 2. Army of Darkness. They didn't like Army of Darkness.
Okay. Maybe I'm getting them mixed up then. Because Army of Darkness is it unrelated to Evil Dead?
Army of Darkness is Evil Dead 3.
Okay, there we go.
And it's like a PG-rated like fantasy movie set in the medieval times versus the other two, which are very strange. And
yeah, I know, because I know I've seen both of them, but I'm like blanking on the full story world.
I would say, yeah, Last Action Hero is just weird because, like I said, like nobody really understood a movie that was making fun of, like that was both a love letter to and also satirizing the action genre at the time.
So I thought, we don't often do this, but I decided maybe it'd be interesting to look up what were the top rated shows in that 1990 to 1991 season.
We never do that. Why don't we do that?
We never do that. But for context, when this show was airing, okay, this is a sign of the times. Out of the top 10 shows, 7 were sitcoms.
Mm-hmm.
So further evidence that this was like the format of the time. But Cheers was number 1, followed by 60 Minutes. Then you have Roseanne, A Different World, Cosby Show, Murphy Brown, Empty Nest. Then you have America's Funniest Home Videos. Then Monday Night Football. Then Golden Girls and Designing Women. So that's your top 10, which includes a couple of ties. A little bit lower on the list, you have Full House, you have Family Matters, you have Coach, you have Who's the Boss, you have Major Dad. So there were tons of these big sitcoms
Major
from the
Dad.
time. Growing Pains, The Wonder Years. What's interesting is in the list of the top 30 charting shows, Davis Rules did make the list down at number 20, tied for 27th place, slightly beating The Wonder Years.
Whoa. That doesn't seem right.
And doing just as well as Baby Talk and Growing Pains.
It's really fun to look back on. I mean, now, you look back on a lot of these canceled shows that we cover, and a lot of them were doing fine. Networks could be so brutal. Like you think of I'll always go to the same place, but you think of a cult classic show like Firefly, which was it's this huge, cult, everybody loves it and blah, 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 talked about 20 years later and all that. It did, as far as ratings go, it was pulling in 12, 15 million people an episode. Yeah. But back then, they wanted 20, 25 million. Now, the highest rated things now, they don't pull that.
No. Well, yeah. So to give you those details, Davis Rules during that season did an average rating, if I'm understanding correctly, this isn't an average number of millions of people watching per episode. Davis Rules did 14.3. Okay. Full House did 15.9. Not that much more. The difference between being 14th place on the list and getting to continue for several years and getting canceled can be 1 million people an episode. And nowadays it's you're lucky if that's all you get.
Yeah. So that's a good thing. So yeah. So I inflated my numbers there. You're right. Back the Firefly numbers would have been 5 or 6, but it shows you that's how much viewership would come down over that 10, 15 year period between those two things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because and now obviously much, much lower because people don't watch scheduled television. I mean, they do, sure, but not in those, I'm sure NCIS pulls in those numbers, but outside of a certain demographic that you're not pulling that in.
All right. Well, as long as we're talking about the industry insider stuff from the time, maybe we should give our old buddy, Mr. Producer, a call and see what he has to say about this show.
Hello, Aaron, my boy.
Hello, Mr. P. How are you?
I'm doing great. Happy New Year to you and the little cast web.
Thanks, Mr. P. Did you have good holidays?
Yeah, such a sweet boy. So nice of you to ask. I sure did. I was down at the Sandbank, my little home away from home down at Lake Buena Vista.
Oh, sure. Just yourself?
No, I was lucky enough to be joined by the incomparable Matt Bopp for a little producers conference.
Oh, quite the meeting of the minds.
Oh, you're telling me.
Did you guys come up with any projects?
Oh, we sure did. Let's see. We chatted about, Matt's currently hard at work at the 2.5 Men sequel show, Five Guys. But actually, we didn't really get to talk about it too much.
What about That's It?
That's It. Oh, sure. We did. Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about, and we were pitching by, you know what? No, for once, I don't think we talked business at all.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Kid, it really was. It's been a long couple of years. Decades, really. But it was nice to just kick back on the beach with someone dear and enjoy the pickle-ritas. You see, a pickle-rita, it's like a margarita, but...
with pickles.
Right. So you know all about them.
God, no.
I tell you, kid, the older I get, the more I realize it ain't about the projects. It's about the pickle-based alcoholic beverages that you share with the people you love.
Very well said.
Well, until next time.
He's a complicated man.
I never got to bring up Uncle
you guys
Buck.
didn't even talk about Uncle Buck. He just talked about his vacation and then dropped off. That was weird.
Well, honestly, that was probably the most interesting thing we were going to get anyway.
He actually invited me up to that timeshare once.
Did he really? Wow.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, wonderful weekend. A lot of pickles in that fridge. A lot of pickles.
Well, on that note, I guess we could all just, light up some cigars for our poker night and sign off.
I'm definitely going to continue watching Uncle Buck because I did not get to finish the movie. The movie. I will not remember that this existed.
Yeah. But Uncle Buck the movie, if you haven't seen it, go watch
watch
that.
it. Your heart will be warmed.
Yeah, that's our final recommendation. It's like
watch the movie.
Watch the movie. Watch the movie, Uncle Buck. That Was a Show is created and hosted by Brynn Burney, Andrew Barry Helmer, and myself, Aaron Yeager. It's a production of Radio Gizmo in Toronto, Canada. Subscribe, rate, review, and share. Follow us on Instagram and tell your friends about it. That Was a Show?
Radio Gizmo.